Jesse Allen. And I'm back again with another installment of Social School. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the social skills of introducing yourself and others. And as we enter into the professional world, you'll find that you are going to have to introduce yourself over and over again. If you've been in the interviewing process, you know that this is a thing. We'll also talk about why it's important to introduce people who haven't met before to each other. Might be a little bit of a shorter video because ordinarily if I was in the classroom we'd be role-playing this and I'd have you guys give me some good examples and some good insights. But we're gonna work it today, just go through these steps and again talk about the social skills of introducing yourself and other people. Alright, so you find yourself in a situation where you might need to introduce yourself. Like I said, maybe it's an interview. Maybe you're in sales and you have to get to meet someone. Anytime you meet someone for the first time, it's a good idea to introduce yourself. Not only so they know you, but so that you get to know them better and get their name and be able to use their name. And introducing yourself, it looks like this is a pretty basic step, but for a lot of us, this is not something that we do very often or feel very comfortable with. There are 4 basic steps to this, right? So you want to make sure you're choosing the right time and place to introduce yourself. You're going to greet the other person. Hi, my name is what? My name is. You tell them your name. You shake hands if appropriate. That's, obviously in COVID, not always a big thing, but then we ask that other person their name if we need to. And then we get into starting a conversation, right? So tell or ask the other person something to help start your conversation, tell something about yourself, comment on something you both have in common, or ask a question, right? So get that conversation moving, get that person talking to you, and get this introduction out of the way. So step number 1 says choose the right time and place to introduce yourself. And sometimes this is going to be, obvious. Like I said, when you walk into an interview, you definitely are going to want to use this skill. But we start thinking about, what are some good places, what are some good times to introduce ourselves, obviously when you're meeting somebody new. But maybe we want to think about it in terms of the opposite, right? What are some bad times or bad places to introduce yourself? And obviously if somebody's busy, if somebody's on the phone, if they're talking to somebody else, maybe this is not a good time. And I'm sorry to have to say this out loud, but if you're in a public restroom, that's probably the wrong time or place to introduce yourself. That can get pretty awkward. But you just want to think about it. And sometimes, like I said, this is kind of an obvious deal. But for some of us, we feel a little bit awkward and we may be not sure if this is the right time and place. And that's where the whole thought process comes in. So we want to really, again, think about, make sure you choose the right time and place to introduce yourself. Step 2 says, tell the other person your name and shake hands if appropriate. And the point that I want to make here is that you never really get a second chance to make a first impression. So if you are going to shake hands, and like I said, I know it's not as common in times of COVID, but you want to make sure you have a nice firm handshake, you have good body language, good posture, right? You're looking that person in the eye and you're saying, hi, my name is Jesse Allen, and it's nice to meet you. And so you want for your first impression, you want for them to remember your name. Again, especially if you're in an interview situation, if you make a good first impression and they remember your name, then when they're going back through that list of applications, then your name is the one that is going to pop up or is going to stick with them. So you want to make sure you tell them your name, talk slowly, talk confidently, use that good confident body language and posture. And then step number 3. So we're going to ask the other person their name if we need to. And again, this is awkward for some people, but I will tell you that having and using someone else's name often is a very important thing in the business world and in social skills. If I can say, nice to meet you, Mr. So-and-so, I'm so glad for the opportunity to do this interview. When you use someone's name, you kind of get a little in, it's like having your foot in the door. And so for some of us, we're not so good at remembering names. But if you get someone's name, if you ask them, what their name is, and then you just kind of repeat it over and over to yourself in your head, then you are much more likely to remember, and then also, be able to use their name as you go through with the interview process or in the process of meeting them. And if the conversation ends, always make sure to repeat it back to them and use it for them. Again, nice to meet you, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. So step number 4 says, tell or ask the other person something to help start your conversation. And this is where sometimes people struggle, and I think why people are sometimes shy about introducing themselves. And the social skill of starting a conversation is actually involved enough that it will probably be the topic of my next video. But you want to share something after you introduce yourself. You want to share something of yourself, maybe comment on something you both have in common, ask a question. A lot of times, frequently after an introduction, I like to engage in small talk. And what that means is it's not going to be something real deep or real personal. I just might say, hi, it's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do this interview. Or, how long have you been working here? Or, what sorts of things am I going to be doing on the job? So I want everybody to think about, how good or how confident are you at the skill of introducing yourself? Obviously, in the professional life, it's something that's very important. And I want you to think about, the last time that you had to introduce yourself to somebody. How did it go? Did you make a good first impression? Did you connect with that person in a way that helped you move forward with whatever working relationship you had or whatever it was to be? And just kind of, again, think about, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? What could you maybe do better or differently next time? And if you were really honest with yourself, probably for the most part, it went fairly well. This is a simple skill. And so for those of us who are nervous about introducing ourselves, I just want to encourage you. Put your name out there. Let people know who you are, right? So you are important. You deserve attention. And when you introduce yourself well, when you go through those steps and you do these things the right way, then you're really putting your best foot forward and putting yourself in the best possible position to get that job, to make a new friendship. And who knows, that person that you're introducing yourself, they may be, your new best friend. You just never know. And so now we get into the social skill of introducing other people. And as you see, this step actually, in theory, is even simpler, right? There are only 3 simple steps to this. But this is a skill that a lot of us do not engage in, right? We do not take the step of, kind of connecting other people. And so as we look at the skill of introducing ourselves, we want to think about, why is it that I'm shy about doing this? Why don't I introduce people to each other when they haven't met before? And so just as a quick overview, right, obviously we're going to name the first person and tell him or her the name of the second person. We want to make sure that we're speaking clearly, make sure that both people kind of catch those names, because again, names are very important. And if you look at the second step, it's just super simple. Name the second person and tell him or her the name of the first person. Hey, John, this is my friend Sally. Sally, please meet John. And then step number 3, we want to say something that helps the 2 people to get to know each other a little bit better. You might mention something that they have in common, invite them to talk, or do something with you. Hey, do you guys want to go to lunch? Or maybe you say how you know each of them, right? So, hey, John, I know I've been working with you for a while, but I used to work with Sally at my last job. I have been teaching social skills for a long, long time, and I will tell you, of all of the 50 different social skills that I teach, this is one of those ones that people, if they were honest with themselves, probably do the least. And if you think about it, maybe you're out with a group of friends and you see another one of your friends. Do you take the time to introduce that friend to your other group of friends? Or, maybe if we're out with our parents and we run into a friend or a coworker, do you take the time to introduce that friend to that other coworker. And again, I think people are pretty shy about this skill, and they don't want to do it because it might feel awkward or uncomfortable. But I want to talk for a minute about why it is so important to be able to introduce other people who haven't met before to each other. And if we want to think about this, we have to talk about social networks or social networking. And so if you imagine, that you have, say, 10 friends, right? So you can think of 10 different people who are your friends. Each one of those friends is kind of like another finger on my hand. And if those friends don't know each other, then they're just kind of separate. They're kind of, each doing their own thing. But if we take the time to connect those friends, right, to introduce them to each other, to get them to spend time together, then all of a sudden we have this social network that's kind of bonded. And what that does, by having a social network, we kind of put ourselves in position to have a good support network, so that if something were to happen with us, those people would know each other and be able to check in with each other to help and support us. And in the world of work, this is especially important. And maybe it's possible that, the job that you got because you knew someone who was working at that job, and that person who already had that job had to put in a good word for you. Maybe that person introduced you to the person who was your future employer. And by introducing people who haven't met before to each other, we kind of give ourselves a little bit of a safety net. And also we create connections that we eventually will be able to benefit from. And so, like I said, I know people these days are not real good at this and they're not real comfortable with it, but it is a super important skill. All right. So I'm going to go back to the name thing, right? So the first two steps in introducing other people to each other has to do with using names. And names are so important. If you really think about it, your name is the most important word in your life. It is the word that you will respond to the most. People will be totally like faded out asleep, but if I say their name, they're going to wake up, right? They're going to pay attention. And when you use people's names in professional settings, again, it gives you a little bit of advantage that not knowing their name or not using their name, you wouldn't have otherwise. And so, again, looking at the steps of introducing other people, we say, hey, John, have you met my friend, Alex? Hey, Alex, this is my friend John. And as we introduce these people to each other, not only are we repeating those names, which kind of gives us a little bit of connection, but we're giving them the opportunity to then meet each other. Because if we rely on our, friends, coworkers, whatever, to introduce themselves to each other, they may not necessarily do that. And so, again, this is a skill that is super important, and I think it's one of the most overlooked or underestimated social skills that there is. And so just like when we introduce ourselves, we want to make sure that it's not awkward and we can kind of flow right into conversation. When we introduce people who haven't met before to each other, we want to say something that kind of helps break the ice or helps the two people to get to know each other a little better. Again, you might mention something that they have in common. You might invite them to talk or to do something with you, or to say how you know each of them. I'm imagining in this picture right here that the young lady who is introducing these two people is like, hi, this is my coworker John. John, have you met Camilla? Camilla works with me in the office, and I've known John forever. He and I went to the same university together. He's a really nice guy, and I think he's someone that you might want to get to know professionally. And so, again, we want to work on that social skill of starting a conversation, and that's why I think probably my next video will cover that. But we have to figure out, how do we break the ice? How do we make this comfortable for both people? After we've, used their names and made sure that they, know each other, how do we kind of bond them together? How do we get them to kind of move forward with us? And sometimes, like it says there, sometimes we invite them, hey, do you guys want to go to lunch? Do you guys want to, hang out after work today? By kind of bonding these people together, we put ourselves in a good situation as far as social networking. All right, so there you have it. Two basic social skills that are not always so easy and not always something that we're comfortable with. But what I want to encourage you guys to do is to practice these skills, introducing yourself and introducing other people. I want you to practice these skills. Maybe it's at work or at school or at home, anytime that you have the opportunity to practice these social skills, you put yourself in a better position professionally and personally. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to do with you guys, the assignment that I've attached to this video is a little bit different. And so I'm going to just kind of go over it and explain it to you just a little bit before I let you go. And so we're going to look at the assignment that I do for today. And I just want to explain in advance the reason why I'm doing this is going to help me sort of decide what videos that I make in the upcoming weeks. And for those of you that are in the classroom, also will help me decide what social skills that we cover in the classroom. So I'm going to get right into it, and then when that is all done, I will let you guys go for the day. So the assignment that goes with this video looks something like this, and it's called a social skills survey, because what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to think about how often you use some of these social skills. So it says, based on your observations at work and at school, rate the amount that you use the following skills. And so if you'll notice, there's a list of questions, something like, do I start conversations with other people? And then there's a list of numbers between 1 and 5. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about how often do you say, for example, start conversations with other people. If you almost never do it, right, only very, very, very rarely, then you circle the 1 or mark the 1 somehow. If you do it seldom or not very often, that's a 2. If you do it sometimes, or you can't really decide, how much you use it, that's a 3. If you do it often or most of the time, that's a 4. Or if you do that skill almost always in the correct social situations, then that's a 5. And there are going to be 20 different questions that all start off with do I. And so I want you to think about this from your perspective. How often do you use these skills? And what this is going to do for me is it's going to show me, once I look at them, how often you guys use these skills and which skills I in particular need to focus on. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to pick out, say, the top 5 of these social skills, and that will determine as I move forward what skills I use and what skills that we need to teach in the classroom. So just going to wrap up for today. If anybody has any questions, you can always ask your teachers or get my email address. I'm going to post my phone number and email address at the end of this video. As always, please feel free to reach out to me if you need to, and I hope everybody has a great day. Bye-bye.